liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Hey, thanks for stopping by Minnesota Black Robe Regiment channel. This is my show, and you are welcome to be here. And I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts, comments, and criticisms. That is not an exaggeration at all. I'm gonna talk for a few minutes while I wait for some people to show up. If you're tuning in right now, please say hi so I know you're in the chat. If you would, please share this out. This is, I wish I could say this is a culmination of a story that I've been working on for the last week, especially. But I'm afraid it's probably not the culmination of the story. I'm afraid it's probably just about 10 feet below the tip of the iceberg. And, you know, when you think about some of the stuff that I've been telling you guys, really, when you think about what I've been telling you since November, when I had Chase Johnston on to talk about the situation involving him and the Rochester, Minnesota Police Department and the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office, and the fact that he quite literally exposed a child sex predator back in 2022. And upon my counsel, took that evidence to the Rochester, Minnesota Police Department and turned that over, and they went nowhere with it. You would think we'd be done talking about this since November, that it would all be washed up, but it isn't. And that's why I want, if you guys are watching this, whatever social media platforms you use, if text messaging, whatever the case it might be, please share this out. And while I'm waiting for a few more people to tune in, I know that Chase and others are sharing this out and they're gonna watch. Please head over to either my Subscribestar, and if you don't like to use Google or YouTube for membership stuff, please head over to my Subscribestar, pick a support level there. If you don't mind using membership stuff, feel free to, and I encourage you to hit memberships on my channel and pick a level, entry level or whatever it is, because it's helping. It really is. I've picked up numerous new, and I've only been doing it for 2 weeks. I've picked up numerous subscribers who have also then become members of my channel, and there's going to be content exclusive to members coming out over the next couple of days. And I've got enough content in the background that I'm going to be able to put up stuff that'll be available for members only for quite some time. So that's one of the perks. So you're going to see some behind the scenes stuff that I haven't put out anywhere else. So if you would throw me some support that way. If you have a question or if there's something you'd want to ask or talk about tonight, this isn't going to be a real long stream after I get through my rambling and my shilling for myself here. But if there's something you want to talk about, something you would like to ask, please feel free to ask. I can't promise you that I'll see everything that you say. Super chat, super thank you, super sticker, whatever the case might be, that'd be great. And then after the stream is done and it's processed, please go back out and share it. I really do want as many people as possible to see this, because this is vitally important. And thanks to everybody that is watching so far. I see several of you in the chat. Fear Porn, H. Fred, Flying Auditor is here. Flying Auditors, not only is he a subscriber, but he's a member of the channel and he's one of my moderators. So, Flying Auditor, if you would, if I mention any links or anything tonight, if you're feeling up to it there with those old fingers of yours, if you could put links in. And while we're at it, I would recommend that everybody head over and check out Chase's channel, The Hard Road TV. He has a lot of really good stories that he's telling, and he's probably single-handedly responsible for exposing. Yes, I use that on purpose. Single-handedly responsible for exposing some of the garbage that is taking place in and around the city of Rochester, Minnesota, as well as Olmsted County. And as many of you know, as I said at the very beginning, Chase did turn in a Deputy Matt Adamson of the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office almost 2 years ago now, and was ignored. And I did a live stream about that last week, a couple of them actually. And the local media has finally admitted that Rochester, Minnesota Police Department, under the leadership of Chief Franklin, does have to acknowledge that they did have the information. They just chose not to do anything with it because basically they didn't like the way it looked. Oh, hey, H. Fred, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. Much appreciated, actually. And I know you're local to me, so that's a risk for you, you know. So I really do appreciate that membership. Flying Auditors put up Chase's channel in the chat, so if you guys want to head over and subscribe to Chase's channel, that would be amazing. He would appreciate it. I can guarantee it. And so then you fast forward to last November when I had Chase on, and we talked about not only how he caught Deputy Matt Adamson of the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office, but how he was treated subsequent to catching him. The fact that he made some bad mistakes, bad choices, ended up with a couple of things he's dealing with. But then last summer, caught another sexual predator in Rochester, and that story is up on his channel. Suffice it to say that the Rochester Police Department was called, and when they showed up, they were called by the predator that Chase caught, by the way. And when they showed up, instead of arresting the predator, they let the predator go free again, just like they did with Deputy Matt Adamson. And this is all important to this story, and we're going to get to it in just a second here. They not only did they let the predator go, they arrested Chase. No, he was not a Mayo employee. He was from Owatonna. He also had a Mayo employee. He also caught a Mayo intern, doctor, resident, trying to meet with a underage child at Flapdoodles in Rochester, ice cream joint. So, I mean, talk about depraved, right? And Chase has that video somewhere. I don't know if that's still up on his channel, but it's still there. So that answers that question. Nick Culver, thank you so much for another membership. I really do appreciate you guys doing that. You guys are going to get me all emotional on the night before Memorial Day. So I've had a great day, by the way. It's just been phenomenal. I had a chance to go on Mitch Berg's show from the Northern Alliance Radio Network and talk about a project that I'm part of here in Minnesota called Defend the Guard. I'm going to see if I can get that up on my social media and maybe even clips of it here on my YouTube channel. But anyway, so once again, H. Fred and Nick Culver, thank you so much for those memberships. So Chase has exposed this pattern of Rochester, Minnesota Police Department in particular, and the how do I want to say this? Olmsted County Sheriff's Office covering up, but not just them, but the Olmsted County Attorney's Office under the leadership of Mark Ostrom are super soft on sex crimes. They really are. And yes, I know what I said there. They are terribly flaccid when it comes to sex crimes here in southeast Minnesota. And uh, nothing highlights that more than what we saw this week. And I have done 2 videos on that this week so far. And none of you are going to be surprised by it. By the way, I've been getting restricted by Facebook from posting much on some of these law enforcement pages, just so you guys are aware. It keeps telling me I've overdone it for um, for a lot of different reasons. So I'm going to start off here by showing you guys this story. Okay, you ready for this? And I've done a story, a couple of streams on this where I got pretty fired up this week, and I'd encourage you guys to go look up some of the stuff I had to say on those. But they are there. So here we go. We're going to take a look at City of Rochester's first, that first got my attention this week. So I'm sure you guys can see it, but I'm going to read it. The original post, if you guys can see here, I'm highlighting that. Is that showing up on screen for you guys? Can you see? Yeah, well, sort of. You can sort of see that. But anyway, I'll read it. On May 21st, around 7 a.m., officers were dispatched to the Galleria, 111 Broadway Avenue South, on a report of an exposer. A 24-year-old Rochester man was located in the north public stairwell, pants down and touching himself. He was cited for indecent exposure and escorted off the property. Now, that's indecent exposure here in Minnesota, and that's an option for a misdemeanor crime in the state of Minnesota, right? That's an option. Certainly allowed. Not necessarily good idea in the state of Minnesota to allow a sexual predator, and that's what that is. That's sexually predacious behavior. But it's what it was. Then they updated that night on May 21st around 5 p.m. Officers responded to the 2nd Street ramp on a report of a man exposing himself. They located the same individual from earlier in the day. He was on the top level of the ramp, standing on the roof of the elevator shaft, naked from his waist down. He was arrested and later charged with indecent exposure. So this time he was arrested. All right. He was arrested this time and taken in. Okay. So now he's facing more charges. And some of this is probably going to sound repetitive to some of you because I know a lot of you have tuned in and watched. But here's where the story gets incredibly interesting. I predicted at the same time that they were arresting this individual on that night, at the same time they were arresting that individual, I was live streaming that he was going to reoffend. I predicted he was going to reoffend. I predicted his behavior was escalating, and I predicted that he was going to get caught again, or he was going to actually physically victimize somebody. I did not predict it was going to be less than 12 hours. But here's where the problem comes in. And I want to say I almost hesitate to even bring it up, but I really, obviously I don't hesitate to bring it up because I'm bringing it up. But when you look at the totality of the history that we have of just over the last 2 years of the Rochester Police Department and the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office and the Olmsted County Attorney's Office acting as prosecutor in and around Olmsted County, with Rochester being included in that. When you look at the totality of their track record of just how weak they are on addressing sex crimes, there is no way that you can believe it's accidental. Not at all. There's no way that anyone can believe that the soft approach that they take, the flaccid approach, the limp-wristed approach that they take to this is not by design. And so before I share the next thing that I'm going to share with you, for those of you that are watching, here are your options. Put a 1 in the chat if you think option 1 in the chat for option 1. This is all coincidental. And Rochester being the third largest metro area in the state, it's just going to be impossible for law enforcement to properly deal with some of these minor sexually predacious behaviors because there's too much information out there and there's too many things going on and there's just no way to accurately handle that. Now, if that's your legitimate opinion of this, your legitimate view of this, then put a 1 in the chat. Put a 2 in the chat if you think that cops use their discretion. They ascertain in the moment that this is not as big of a deal as it could be. And so we're going to make our best judgment in this moment and allow this individual the benefit of the doubt that they're not going to reoffend, and therefore we know we're running a risk, but we're going to take it. 1 in the chat if it's just too much going on and they can't do anything about it. 2 in the chat if cops are using good discretionary judgment and they are taking what would be considered calculated risk, hoping that it turns out well. Or number 3, there's something going on that's H. Fred first says 1. He goes, no, 2. But number 3, there's something going on behind the scenes, under the surface, that these officers in and around Rochester, as it relates to Olmsted County Sheriff's Office, as it relates to the City of Rochester, and as it relates to Mark Ostrom's County Attorney's Office, something's going on, and they're not taking these things seriously because they don't want to take them seriously for whatever the reason might be, to protect Mayo Clinic's reputation, to protect the city from a bad reputation so people aren't afraid to come here for Mayo Clinic treatment. So I've got H. Fred having voted 1, then 2, and Nick Culver voting 3, Fear Porn voting 3, and based on the number of people who appear to be watching, that's all we have for votes. But I'm pretty sure there are more people than that watching. So here's where we're going to go with this, folks. All right. Like I said, this doesn't have to be a terribly long stream tonight, because I think that this will outrage everyone. So here we go. KROC AM radio. TJ Leverance reporting from May 23rd. Rochester, Minnesota. The Olmsted County Attorney's Office has now charged a Rochester man who is accused of exposing himself twice during the same day in downtown Rochester. The Rochester Police Department posted on its Facebook page on Wednesday that officers responded to the report of an exposer around 7 Tuesday morning. Police found a 24-year-old man at the Galleria building in downtown Rochester with his pants down, the social media post says. Authorities say the man was touching himself when officers located him in a north stairwell of the building at 111 South Broadway Avenue. Then at around 5 p.m., on, officers arrived and found the same man who was described as naked from the waist down, standing on the roof of the elevator. The criminal complaint accuses him of urinating on top of the elevator shaft before he was taken into custody. God forbid that somebody urinate on the elevator shaft, right? Okay. It's funny the things that get put into police reports as if those are going to really make it worse. The alleged exposer, it's supposed to be exposer, but it says exposure, is identified in 2 separate criminal complaints as 24-year-old Terrius James Sees. He now has 2 cases in which he is facing a gross misdemeanor indecent exposure charge. He was released without bail. Wait for it. Court records indicate Seas was convicted of indecent exposure this past March. The conviction stems from a case that opened last year. Folks, they knew about this man. There's no way in the world that they did not know who he was with first contact in the morning. But I'm looking for, I thought I had the original report, but I guess I don't. Yeah, I guess I don't have the original report. I don't know where it went. Oh, you know what? Maybe we could see if we could find a picture of him. Wouldn't that be interesting? So how's it? What are your thoughts on this, everybody? What do you guys think about this so far? Do you think this exposes a track record of someone who has been amping up, if you will, ramping up? Do you think this exposes that they're not taking this seriously? Do you think that, I guess, for lack of, do you think they just don't care? Do you think that it's an issue of incompetence? Do you think that it's an issue of corruption? Do you think it's a combination of incompetent deputies and our officers and corruption at some level? Because I just don't know how else to look at it when it comes to all of, or the totality of, the stories over the last 2 years, where predators have been allowed to flee the scene, basically, and go unchecked. In the case of Matt Adamson for almost 2 years, and in the case of this sexual predator from Owatonna, no charges ever, but yet Chase was charged for felony stalking, which is demonstrably untrue. I'm trying to find this individual's face. I cannot, for the life of me, I cannot find an image of him. So if there's somebody out there that can find an image of him, shoot me the link so I can put it up there. As you look at what's gone on with Chase and what they allowed Deputy Matt Adamson to get away with for almost 2 years, what they allowed with that sexual predator to get away, and the fact that, Sergeant Ben Schlegg of the City of Rochester Police Department charges Chase and doesn't do anything about the other guy. I mean, there's a clear track record here of problems. I mean, it's clear. It's evident. There's no way around arriving at a conclusion that there are some serious ethical questions that need to be asked, or policy questions that need to be asked. And as I said the other night on my live stream, there has to be something that can be done policy-wise. Here you have a 24-year-old man who was convicted in March of something that took place last year. So it's in Rochester. So there's no way that the Rochester Police Department didn't know about this guy. And I'm not saying every officer has to know him personally, but when they ran him on Tuesday morning of this last week, his name would have come up in their search as a convicted exposer, as someone who's been previously convicted of indecent exposure. There's no way around it, which immediately raises the severity of the crime, having a prior conviction from a misdemeanor to now a gross misdemeanor. But they let him go. Now, when you think then that they had to wait for him to reoffend then that night, that evening, at a time where there would have been hundreds of people around. Like, I need people to understand, Rochester may not be Minneapolis. Rochester may not be St. Paul. But Rochester is, and they brag about it. The Rochester Police Department, the city of Rochester, the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office, Olmsted County itself brag about Rochester being the third largest metro area in the state. Rochester Police Department brags about their agency being the third largest agency in the state. That tells you, population-wise, especially when you bring in the transient Mayo Clinic people who are there for treatment, or people who are coming in to work there, or take part in seminars and whatnot, specialists who are flying in for things. The population of Rochester is always buzzing, always growing. It's fluctuating. At any given time, it could be 120 to 180, 190,000, maybe 200,000 people in Rochester at any given moment. A lot of them working in the downtown area, a lot of them using these parking ramps, a lot of them using these skyways and these walkways that connect to these parking ramps. This man has exposed himself last year, gets convicted, goes back this week and exposes himself not once, but twice before he finally gets arrested. And we're supposed to believe nothing can be done by policy for the Rochester, Minnesota Police Department to actually do something about this. And that's what I'm trying to get people to help me with. Whether you live in Rochester or not, whether you live in Olmsted County or not, the only way that this is going to get covered, and when you go in and you do a search for news about this incident, there's really only one story being told about it. The other news agencies aren't talking about this in a way where it's going to capture the attention of the people. And, and I'm thankful that Rochester Police Department put it on their Facebook page, because I watch them like a hawk. I watch them and I watch Olmsted County like a hawk. Yes, I do it intentionally. I am a disciple of Spike Cohen's principle of harass local government civilly. We need to bully them. Local government employees need to be on social media, need to be bullied because of the garbage that they do. And Spike Cohen has mastered that. And so I believe that there's a way to not harass in a genuine definition of harassment, but they need to bury their heads in the sand and slink away and stop putting up their propaganda. Because for every piece of propaganda that local government or any level of government puts up, that's say, hey, look at this good work we're doing, there's something going on behind the scenes that they're screwing up, that they fouled up, that needs to be changed. Whether it's, Fred knows this because he's watched several of these videos of law enforcement in and around Rochester speeding, violating traffic code for no good reason. And just a day and a half ago, I put a video out of what I believe I've identified the officer, a squad car from the city of Lewiston, Minnesota, 30 miles outside of their jurisdiction, doing 10 to 15 miles an hour over the speed limit along Highway 52 North in Rochester. Yes, you heard that right. 10 to 15 miles an hour over the speed limit They're not. She's from Lewiston. This female cop is from Lewiston. She's not responding to an emergency in Rochester. So this kind of stuff is happening all the time. And these are the things that no one's talking about. No one's talking about these things. No one's pointing this out. So when Chase's story broke about what happened to him and the fact that he initially exposed Deputy Matt Adamson, one local newspaper reporter covered it, but they hushed it up right away. And then when they did talk about it again, they took Mark Ostrom's narrative of the situation and reported him as a vigilante. And I'm like, with Chase, and I said this, a couple of days ago, like, fine, you're creating the need for this vigilante mindset where people are now going to start catching criminals on their own. And I'm not advocating violence. Anybody who knows me knows I do not advocate for violence. I am a adherent to the non-aggression principle. The only time that you will ever hear me talk about aggression is when I'm using aggression to respond to aggression that's aimed at me or someone I care about, or a family member or a neighbor who I want to defend or help. But law enforcement, especially the Rochester, Minnesota Police Department, especially the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office, and I know I'm painting with a broad brush. I get it. I know dozens upon dozens of people in both of those agencies that I like on a very personal level. People that I have an affinity for. People that I worked alongside for almost 13 years. People that to this day, when I see them, I'd walk them up, I'd shake their hand, I'd wrap my arms around them, give them a hug and say, man, I miss you. And these are the people that I'm pleading with. I'm not just pleading with you that are watching. I need your help. We need to bring pressure to bear on the Rochester, Minnesota Police Department. We need to bring pressure to bear on the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office. We damn sure need to bring pressure to bear on the Olmsted County Attorney's Office and start to ask these really hard questions. Why? And this is the kicker. This guy who was busted twice on this week, on the same day, when he was arrested on Tuesday night, he went to court the next day and was released without a bond. He was released without a bond. Released on his own recognizance. One conviction under his belt. Reoffense twice in one day this week. A month and a half. Let's call it 2. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. 2 months since his conviction was registered in March. So let's say it was March 1st. And I'm just going to say 2 months. A sexual predator reoffends twice in one day, goes to court the next day, and the justice system lets him go. But Chase Johnston, who catches a sexual predator and exposes him, not once, but twice catches him, in Olmsted County, in the city of Rochester, both of them are allowed to go free when Chase exposes them. And now Chase is facing felony freaking charges for doing the job the cops should have done in the first place. But we're supposed to applaud the heroes of the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office and the heroes of the Rochester, Minnesota Police Department for doing their job. Look, folks, here's the reality. These people work for us. And I don't think it's a great approach to walk up to every person you see in uniform or every public servant that you see and go, hey, man, you take orders from me because I'm the boss. You work for me. That's not how you approach these things. There might be a place for that at some point in a conversation. But what there is a place for, and what we really need to start getting these people to understand, is that you get paid really well on the backs of the wage slaves of the United States. Right? In the state of Minnesota alone, the average cop, we hear the propaganda all the time. Cops need to get paid more. Cops don't make enough for all the crap that they put up with. Cops need more money. They need more. They put up with all of this stuff that's so dangerous. They got to deal with the crazies. They got to deal with the psychos. They got to deal with all the Karens in society. They got to deal with all you people who hate them. Well, they need to make more money on the backs of the taxpayers. And in the state of Minnesota alone, the average cop makes more than twice the median income of a single family home in a single income home in the state of Minnesota. So think about that. More than twice the average per one officer than a single income home in the state of Minnesota. So let's say you, as a single income home, and my numbers aren't dead on. I have them all written down somewhere, but that's not the point of this video. In right now, let's say you make $30,000 a year. God forbid anybody's trying to live on that right now, right? But let's say you make $30,000 a year. Let's say that's median for you. Let's say it. The average cop that you meet in the state of Minnesota, the average cop is making $60,000 or more a year. So let's just say $65,000. The average cop that you meet is making more than a single income home. And it would take two of you making $30,000 a year to catch up to what that cop makes by himself or herself. That's your wages. You're a wage slave. You don't have an option. That money comes out of your check whether you like it or not. That money comes out for sales tax on different things. Like in Rochester, they have a local sales tax. There's permitting fees and all of that stuff builds and builds and builds and goes into the coffers of the city and gets dispersed out to the people who work for the city, covers the city expenses, which includes wages, on top of the taxes, other taxes in Olmsted County and around the state, gets dispersed out to those people. So you're making $30,000 a year. Maybe your partner, your spouse, whatever, might be making $30,000 a year. And the average cop that you meet is making still another $5,000 more than you if there's two people working in your home. Now, let's say you've got a cop married to a cop. In that family, they're now making $120,000 to $130,000 a year for two people. Or they're married to anybody who's got a job. They're still making markedly more money than you. But what do we hear? They need more. But what do we never hear more about? We don't hear that there needs to be some sort of standard of performance. And I'm not talking about quotas for writing tickets. I'm talking about do your goddamn job. Right? You encounter a sexual predator in public who's touching himself in a busy area in front of people who probably have children around them. Arrest them. And I don't care if your chief says we're not arresting them. You arrest them, and then you become a whistleblower and say, I arrested this person. I took him to the Olmsted County or whatever county it is or whatever agency, but let's deal with Olmsted County and Rochester, Minnesota right now. You arrest that person and you take them in and you say, I'm charging this person and I made a discretionary decision as an officer because I have the authority with misdemeanors to arrest on a misdemeanor charge. Because, oh, by the way, as I look at this, he's already been convicted. So I think he might be a risk to society. And then you get called in front of your chief. And the chief says, you know what our policy is that for these crimes, we're not going to arrest. We're not going to have them incarcerated. We're not going to put them in front of a judge. We're just going to give them a court date and tell them to show up. And you're going to say, you know what? Screw you, with all due respect, chief. I don't trust this person to not victimize somebody else, and I cannot have that on my conscience. So if you want to fire me, go ahead. If you want to discipline me, go ahead, but I'm going public. That's what needs to happen. But you know what's happening? Nothing. Not a goddamn thing. Because all the good cops are scared silent that if they say anything, they're going to lose their jobs. And why does that matter to them? Because they make good freaking money. And every once in a while, you'll meet somebody who gets out and says, you know what? I don't care what the money is. I can't put up with this anymore. I can't work in this career field anymore. I can't do this anymore. But they don't, because they're counting the days to their retirement, they're counting on that pension, and they don't want to do anything to jeopardize it. So when they know that there's something going on that stinks, whether it's intentional corruption or it's just incompetence, they won't say anything and they won't rock the boat, because it's in their best interest to just shut up and get along and go along so they can keep their job and keep that paycheck, because they make more than twice than you do. How is that right? In a world where these people are public servants and they live off of your back. They live off of your back. So you work in a warehouse or you work in a factory and you don't make a ton of money. They're living off of you, and they have the authority of the local state and the county state and the city state to come to you when you're driving down the road and you're doing 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, like the female cop from Lewiston, Minnesota. They can pull you over and economically terrorize you on the side of the road so they can get even more of your money. But you know who's going to pull them over when they're speeding for no reason in their squad car? No one. And boy, when you point out how they're failing, when you point out where they could have arrested somebody, when you point out that they could have intervened and prevented more victims from being created, and you point that out, you're a radical. You hate cops. I don't hate them. And I'd venture a guess that 98% of the people who watch this, who are angry, they don't hate the cops. There's no personal animus towards these people. No. I'll admit, I hate Ben Schlegg. I've had my own dealings with him. He threatened me with criminal charges for wanting to charge a public servant with a crime. He said, you can go ahead and do this, but I'm going to recommend you be charged with a crime for filing a false report. Because, and I'm going to paraphrase, you don't get to determine whether or not you're a victim. We'll determine whether or not you're a victim and whether or not you get to file charges. That's what he said to me. And if you want to hear that, that's going to be one of the body cam videos that's going to be up. Now, you know what I regret? I regret that I didn't file charges and make him do it. But you know what I'm glad I did? I'm glad I didn't file charges, because what we'll learn in Chase's case, go back and watch my interview with Chase. You go back and watch my interview with Chase from back in November. They'll do it. They'll trump up charges to take your teeth away from you. Hey, good evening, Juggalasses. Thank you for stopping by. Mikey B. Thanks for stopping in. I don't know if you've been in before, but thanks for stopping by if this is your first time. Thanks to everybody who's here still, by the way. And if you would, please continue to share this out. And like I said, this is not going to be a real long stream. I'm going to get ready to wrap this up here in a little bit. So Juggalasses, you're going to have to go back and watch from the beginning to hear the whole story. But here we are. Here's this totality of all of the situations that we've been talking about with Chase since November that's been going on for now over 2 years. Is this track record of local law enforcement. And if it's happening in Rochester, Minnesota, which is relatively dinky compared to some places where some of you live, which are much larger areas, we have this track record of them being flaccid on how they handle law enforcement or handle enforcing the laws on sexual predators. A track record of it. And now this week, not only do we have a guy who was convicted back in March for an incident last year, who gets caught, caught twice in one day, finally arrested the second time, doing the same thing that got him convicted back in March. But then when he does go to court, he gets released without a bond. And I'm a huge advocate that bonds need not be punitive. They shouldn't be cruel and unusual, right? You have a right to a reasonable bond. But is it reasonable to take a person who clearly is escalating their behavior, who is clearly demonstrating sexual predation habits, who's ramping up, and as I said in another stream, these people don't just fix themselves overnight. Do we just let these people go without a bond, without getting them in for some sort of freaking help? I want to know what the judge was thinking. I want to know what the prosecutor's office was thinking. Mark Ostrom, what in the blue freaking blazes was going through your head when you're prosecuting attorney in this situation? Because I know you didn't go in there and argue this. Pray to God you didn't, because if you did, if you argued this case and was content with this guy, like, excuse the terminology, getting off without having to pay a bond, that blows the doors open for a whole other round of questions. But, like, what the hell? So when I talk about I don't hate the cops, I distrust them. Even the people that I know, I distrust you when you don't speak up about these things. How are you not, like, you should be whistleblowing. And if you want to talk to somebody about this, reach out to me privately. You can reach me privately. You can set up a fake burner email address. You can email me mbrrpod mbrrpodcast at yahoo.com, excuse me. mbrrpodcast at yahoo.com. And and say, look, I don't want you to know who I am, but I am willing to give you information. I will protect you. I will not let anybody know. I will act as media like I have been doing since the beginning of this show. If there's one person out there anywhere, but especially in Olmsted County, especially in Rochester's, Minnesota's police department, who says, here's what the internal policy is. I will provide the documents to you. I will protect my source. I will not let you go down or burn. Probably shouldn't have said let you go down. Probably a bad choice of words for the topic at hand. But I will not let you burn. I will not reveal my sources. And that goes for any cop in any agency anywhere in the United States. Like, there's a treasure trove of pro law enforcement commentary shows out there. Brandon Tatum, Donut Operator. You pick them. They're out there. There's any number of them that are out there. Any of them. We'll talk to you if you want to complain about how society is treating law enforcement. I'm over here saying, look, if you want to talk about what you know is going on inside of your agency, especially if you're from Olmsted County, especially if you're from Rochester PD, but any agency in the United States, you reach out to me, I will protect you, and we will get the information out. We will get the information out. I know how to do it. I can do it. If you can provide documentation. And that's what needs to happen. Olmsted County, but especially right now with everything that we know that's been going on in Rochester with the Rochester Police Department and their clear track record of flaccid treatment of sex offenders or potential sex offenders, somebody in there has got to be as disgusted about this as I am. Somebody in there has got to know what's being said behind the scenes, and I will tell your story. We have got to do something to affect change. And if you're in the Rochester, Minnesota area and you don't know who I am, but you are going, what the hell is going on? So we have H. Fred watching, who, by the way, just joined and became a member tonight. Jugalassis is watching. He's a member. Nick Culver became a member. Thank you guys for that. But if if you're like H. Fred, who lives and operates around the Rochester area, I know he's told me, H. Fred said, I'm not aware of some of these things. So if you're one of those people that's watching this and you're normally a back the blue at all costs and thin blue line supporter, but you're going, what the hell's going on? You need to show up at your city council meeting and start demanding that the mayor and the city council answer questions. Start putting the pressure on them to get these answers. Look, we could talk all day long about civil rights, right? We could talk all day long about how cops treat minorities and how cops treat this person or that person based on identity politics. I don't give a damn about identity politics. I hate identity politics. And here's what I'm going to tell you. I don't believe for a minute that the average cop sets out in the beginning of his shift and goes, I'm going to look for a minority to terrorize. No, because a cop who's going to terrorize somebody is going to terrorize them regardless of what their ethnic status is, regardless of what their sexual identity is. A cop who sets out in the beginning of his day, having a bad day, and he decides he's going to take it out on somebody, is not going to pick a person based on their ethnicity or their sexual identity or anything like that. They're just going to pick somebody and they're going to abuse them. So I don't give a damn about identitarianism. I don't give a damn about identity politics. What I give a damn about is how all of us are victimized when cops don't do their job the way they're supposed to. And that takes the form of two different things. Intentional violation of your natural rights as they're described in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. There's that. And there's, deprivation of rights under the color of law, and there's all sorts of fancy terminology around that. And folks, I love fancy terminology. When I read these things, I take this stuff in and I absorb this stuff. I love it. But when we're having these conversations, and you guys know how I approach this, even though most of you aren't talking back to me, I'm having a conversation with you. I don't need to throw out deprivation of the color, of rights under the color of law. That stuff's all well and good. But when it comes down to it, you have cops who decide to go out. They're just going to abuse the crap out of you by abusing your natural rights as they're delineated in the Constitution. And then you have cops who abuse you by not doing their job that you pay them very well to do as a wage slave to the state. You pay them to do a job, and that's protected serve, right? It's emblazoned on their cars. It's on their mission statements. It's in their coat of arms. You can't help but see it. Protected serve, serve and protect, serve and protect. And when they fail to do that, you're also being victimized by them. Because the next time this guy who got off, there again, bad choice of words, who got out of the lockup on Wednesday morning without paying a bond, that next person they victimize might be you. It could be your son. It could be your daughter. It could be your wife. It could be your grandchild. It could be your neighbor's kid. It could be your neighbor. And why? Because the criminal justice system in the state of Minnesota, and frankly across the entire United States, is failing us. It is a two-tiered system. And I dare you to tell me it's not when you go and watch the video that I put up of the Lewiston, Minnesota Police Department female officer, who, like I said, I believe I identified, and I'm going to double check that. And I'll put a short video out on that. You take that video and you watch it. Listen to my commentary and tell me there isn't a two-tiered justice system in the state of Minnesota and across the United States. I dare you. I freaking dare you to prove to me, to challenge me to my face and tell me, you bootlicking sycophants, that there isn't a two-tier justice system where there's rules for thee but not for me in this country. And especially in Southeast Minnesota, especially in the state of Minnesota. All of you, I cannot stand Tim Walz. He's a filthy piece of trash. He's a waste. He has done nothing but hurt this country. And the DFL has hurt the state. And the DFL has done nothing but to help him hurt this state. But you know who's complicit in that? Every law enforcement agency that has gone along with every goddamn thing that they've said they're going to do red flag laws to start with. And then I want you to look at your county and look at your state and look at every single one of your law enforcement agencies where there are red flag laws and ask yourself, has your sheriff, has your chief of police come out and said, we are not going to enforce red flag laws? Because the victimization that happens to you is happening at 2 points. The state, at whatever level, federal, state, county, state, municipal, state, whatever it is, they make a determination that you deserve to be victimized X, Y, and Z way. And then the second point comes in where they bring the full force and authority of local law enforcement to bear against you because they have badges and guns and the authority and the permission to violate the non-aggression principle against you for something as simple as not mowing your yard or going a little too fast or driving without your seatbelt on or pointing out that you've caught more sexual predators than they have, so they're going to arrest you instead of the predators. And if you don't think it can happen to you, you just wait. Just wait. Because God forbid if you're one of those people that just bends over backwards or bends over forwards so they can take whatever the blue line wants to give them. Where are you going to be when they come for you? Where are you going to be when it's one of your kids who's being victimized? One of your one of your children that is being victimized by one of these predators. And the cops haven't done anything about it. And then you find out that they could have stopped this person and they didn't. You hear these stories over and over and over and over and over again. These people are coming out. There's a new hashtag that's been going around for the last year and a half or so that I've been aware of it. Back the blue until it happens to you. Here's the deal. Brian at Here's the Deal does a really good job of covering a lot of this stuff. I don't know how he does it. He's putting out like 18 videos a day. Maybe that's how he makes his living. I don't know. I'd like to do that. So if you'd like to help me do that, join the memberships and give some memberships to people. There's another show. But Brian over at Here's the Deal does a really good job of pointing this stuff out. See, the thing is they're not going to just victimize the people who speak out against them. Sooner or later, everybody gets victimized. Either intentionally when they choose to violate your natural rights according to the Constitution, or not according, but delineated in the Constitution, or they violate your natural rights by allowing someone who's actually violent, who actually is predating people, whether it be sexually or through violence or through theft or burglary, and they don't do anything about it when they can. And as I was talking to somebody on Friday night, a lot of these decisions are made, and it's not just left-wingers who are making it. See, here's the situation. I don't like to say here's the deal because then Brian will catch that, clip it out, and use it in his opening. Here's the situation. You have the left-wingers that want to defang the police completely. They don't want the police to have any power at all. And unfortunately, I believe the law enforcement is a necessary evil in our society today. Right now, until we get a true libertarian mindset in all people, people are just not going to police themselves. But it is kind of a necessary evil. And the left wing, the prog left, anti-American types who hate natural rights, who hate the Constitution, who hate our republic, they want to completely defang the police for everything other than what they want to use them for, which is to enforce more of their totalitarian, authoritarian, extremist mentality on us. And you can't have any say over anything in a school or anywhere else. We're going to use the cops against you there. They're okay with that. But they don't want them going after actual criminals, violent criminals. Then on the other hand, you have the right wing, the con right, con Inc., the normie cons, who want the cops to have all the power in the world, and they want to protect them with qualified immunity. Well, they're just doing their jobs, so you can't go after them. And so what you end up with there is this perfect storm of unaccountable behavior. Cops could step back and say, they don't want us to do our jobs. And if we do, they're going to send us to prison. And you got over here, you got the right wing going, you don't have to worry about going to prison because we're going to protect you from your own nefarious actions, no matter how bad they are, qualified immunity. And the only time that qualified immunity is going to get stripped from you is when you do something like gun down an airman in the doorway of his own home. And even then, we're going to argue that he deserved it. And once you let that sink in, Chase Johnston catches sexual predators, he gets arrested because he has a criminal history. So did one of the predators that he caught had a criminal history and actually did felony level time in prison for predating children. But Chase went to jail. Go down to Florida, Oskaloosa County. Airman, no criminal record. Some Karen reports that he's having an argument, and a cop shows up and murders him in the doorway of his own home because he came to the door with a gun, and I'm a cop, and you don't get to have a gun in my presence when I'm a cop, because if you do, you're a bad guy, and I'm going to take you out, because at the end of the day, all that matters is that I go home safe. That's the world we live in, folks. Left-wingers want to defang him for everything but what they need to use him for to enforce mandates and lockdowns and all of that, and clear out school board meetings of parents who don't want their kids indoctrinated with left-wing ideology. And then you have the right wing that wants cops to get a pass for everything. And I'm over here, paleo-libertarian, paleo-conservative, saying, by the way, folks, the army isn't the problem today. The military isn't the problem today. The standing military that our founding fathers warned us about are the law enforcement officers in the United States. The standing military today is the institution of policing in the United States, from your local level all the way up to the federal level. And that's why guys like Chase Johnston have to worry about going to prison for doing a job that the standing army should have been doing, but they were too busy kissing the ass of their political leaders. Don't believe me? Pay attention to the news. And that's not directed to the people who tune in all the time. Once again, my friends, share this out. Let everybody know what's going on. Because if we can get people to be aware of what's happening in Rochester, Minnesota and Olmsted County, Minnesota, then they're going to start to become aware that it's probably happening in their community too. And they won't get to say, well, not in my small town, because it's happening in small towns too. It's happening in places like Waterloo, Iowa. It's happening in places like Bellevue, Nebraska. Tune in on Thursday night, because Nate and Samantha are coming back on, and we're going to do an update after Samantha has court on Thursday. And tune in tomorrow if you'd like to hear a conversation with a politician who's actually running to represent the people and not represent other politicians. I'm having that conversation tomorrow night at 8 o'clock with Gary Stewart from here in Southeast Minnesota. Folks, please go back, comment on this video after it processes, share it out so that your friends can watch this. Help me get this in front of people in my area, and maybe even other bigger channels around the United States, so that they'll start to cover the story. I don't care if they link to me, but just help me get this in front of people so that they'll start to cover this story, because I really want pressure brought to bear on these corrupt agencies up here. And I really want officers people I know as individuals. Yes, Central Time, Douglass, 8 p.m. Central tomorrow night, and 8 p.m. Central on Thursday night. I really want other people to pay attention to this, not to me, but to this story, because if we can get other channels to start paying attention, then maybe we can start to get something done. It all starts small. So, my friends, until next time, as my friend Monica made, fight for your liberty. It is yours. Fight for your freedom. It belongs to you. Love you guys. I really do. Sic Semper Tyrannis.
Go for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.